And now to our first conversation. 3 years after President Bola Tinubu launched sweeping economic reforms, Nigeria's economy is showing signs of stronger government revenue, improving foreign reserves, and stabilizing macroeconomic indicators. But despite those gains, millions of Nigerians continue to battle inflation, rising living costs, and economic hardship. So this morning we examine the real impact of Tinubunomics. Has the administration laid the foundation for long-term economic recovery, or are the reforms placing too much pressure on households and businesses? And ultimately, when will ordinary Nigerians begin to feel the benefits of these tough economic decisions? Joining me now to discuss, we have Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Mukhtar. He joins me right here in the studio. It's great to have you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, laddie. My pleasure.
Yeah, so we're looking at Tinubunomics.
I like that.
This morning, and it's been quite the ride. 3 years so far, and we have quite mixed data.
Yeah, I like calling it the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if we flip over now to see government revenue.
That's the good.
That's a good. That has risen.
That's risen.
That's risen a lot.
Since
when it came to power, it was about 711 billion. That was May 2023. Current level about 3.6 trillion. That's monthly revenue generation. So
yeah, but
I guess
again they will tell you what was the exchange rate at the time they were receiving this amount of money. Even if it was coming in naira, then they will not tell you that, oh, the 3 tiers of government, or maybe the state and the local government tell you we are not collecting so much like we used to collect. If we look at by the exchange rate. But when you look at it, you have to also be realistic to ask them that even when the exchange rate was that, you were not collecting dollars, you were collecting naira. So if you look at that, then definitely I think in terms of revenue, we have seen huge revenue for government, huge revenue. But the impact has been very minimal. But again, that's a topic for another day. But so, I think he has done that well.
So I wonder, because we keep talking about, I remember when where the elections were happening, that period, the sentiment was whoever won that time, be it Peter Obi or whoever, they were all pro-business.
Yeah, they were pro-business, yeah.
Right? And I'm wondering, what else could have been done differently to not have the negatives of these reforms? Seeing that revenue has jumped a lot.
I don't know what they would have done differently, to be sincere. In as much as sometimes we look at the tough decisions, we have to commend the president. He took some very, very tough decisions that took years and years. Nobody was ready to tread that part, especially the removal of subsidy. That was a monster. That was a drilling. That was what was making people multi-billionaire to the detriment of the ordinary Nigerians, or even to the generality of Nigerians, not just the ordinary Nigerian. It took a bold step. Remember that popular statement that the subsidy gone. And it was, I think it's 3 years today we had that statement, because we were made to understand that that was not even in the script. So that tells you the kind of boldness and that the president was able to do. I remember I was on a program that day, and we just saw the price of fuel move from 200 naira to about 800 naira, and everybody thought the whole war would come to an end. But today, here we are even buying fuel at 1,300. So it was a very tough decision he made. But again, you could look back to it. If you're in government, you say it was a good decision. We no more see them quarrel again about how much was paid for federal, for state, how much we're supposed to get, how much was paid to subsidy, how much was going to the federation account, how much is going to NNPC. We no more see them quarrel about that again. So you have to give that to him. I think that was a tough decision, but today, looking back at it, if you're in government, that's why I say in quote, if you're in government, the revenue have improved. But if you're not in Nigeria, it has been a huge struggle to match up with daily living because of the high cost of energy. Both whether you're looking at PMS or you're also looking at electricity. It has been huge.
Do you think that there's a way that would have gone through the whole process of subsidy is gone and somehow had a cushion?
Yes, I think there should have been a way. We've said it over and over. There should have been a way. But again,
do you think we're rich enough, or
no?
Since we're an oil producer, is there a way we'd have?
No, laddie, let us go to oil producing. Oil producing that you have not been able to produce up to 2 million barrels per day. You are shouting oil producer. Before you came into power, don't forget that production was even about 800,000 barrels per day. So We're just we're a country that was producing. We're having so much more oil theft than producing. So we don't have to look at that. At the time he came in, for me, we're not even oil producing at all. I mean, he took the tough decisions. Yes, there was a way. Maybe there would have been a way if it was planned. Like I said, it came up spontaneous. Subsidy is gone, and it took a lot of his team by storm. Nobody else. So there was no consistency plan. Even if, don't forget, even if President Buhari at that time have said that they only have enough to pay till the end of June. So ordinarily we're expecting that subsidy will be gone by June ending. But he took that bold step May 29, 1 month before that tenure. So maybe there would have been a consistency plan in terms of seeing how that could have and mitigate the impact on the ordinary Nigerians. But don't forget that the longer you delay such processes, the more we have seen that it will not be taken. So I think he knew that if I don't say this now, we start working on it, we will not get there. So I think there was no other. Remember, like you said, even during his campaign, Atiku Abubakar said he will remove subsidy. Peter Obi said subsidy will be gone. But there may have been a different method. Maybe Peter Obi is telling us that if he has gotten to power, he would have waited for 3 months, he would have put a lot of things in place before he would remove subsidy. But don't forget that at the time Buhari was leaving, when Tinubu took over, Nigeria was broke. We were practically borrowing to pay subsidy. At that time he came in, the federation account, both the state, the local government, and the federal have not had any dime from NNPC. So I wonder how we would have been able to do that.
So I guess what you're saying is regardless who won.
Regardless who won, we would have had this issue. Maybe we would have even had it tougher. Because again, if you want to play to the gallery of the people, and that's what we have been doing for the past 15 years, that's why we never...
I wish we had some kind of AI simulation that would simulate all of this.
I like saying something. If you are due for surgery 15 years ago, when you were younger, you didn't do the surgery, and you're doing the surgery 15 years after, of course the pain will be much, because your body system is not like it used to be 15 years ago. So the pain we are suffering now is based on the decision we did not accept 15 years ago.
Right. All right, there's still more of the good.
Yeah.
Foreign reserves. External reserves, when he came to power, were 35.09 billion. There was a steady decline in the foreign reserves. Now, the last data shows $49.26 billion. So we've been hovering around this level.
We always been, remember that when that data came up, was the foreign reserve that we are having there was based on both on borrowing, the one we're supposed to pay or whatever put together. Remember that time? The real reserve we had at that time people were saying it was about $3 billion. Remember that conversation?
I remember that conversation.
Around that, was the real reserve compared when you remove all.
We're looking for net and all of that.
Exactly.
Right.
So, if you look at the foreign reserve, I mean, they have done well. Look, I mean, I need to say they have done well. Why? When they came in, they had those issues. Remember, exchange rate. They were not ready to defend the currency. The currency moved as high as almost 2,000. People were even saying we'll get to exchange rate of 5,000 naira to $1. We saw the panic. We saw they themselves also were panicking. Today, Bureau de change, adhere, tomorrow they revoke the license, next tomorrow you come. So there was a lot of panic, but I think you have to give it to the CBN. They held their nerve. They went through the process. Today, even if exchange rate is not what it was when they came to power, you can see there is stability.
Stability.
There is no more round tipping. There's no more that back end whereby if you are close to government, you have that differential rate. If you are you remember that time you are going to hash, you had exchange rate at 350 for going to hash. And the people that are doing business, we have exchange rate at 700 and something. But people that are going to go to hash, government will give them. There was so much. And when you look at the trial of the current former CBN governor, you realize that so much happened. There was wastage. But I think they have closed that gap. The market, you remember when they came in, the CBN said, we want to make the Naira competitive. And that has happened. Now they said, after making the Naira competitive, they said, we want to make the Naira stable. Now the naira is stable. It may not be the kind of stability we want, but remember I said it in your program, there was time you asked me that, when will we see that we have had stability in the exchange rate? And I told you then that when they will tell me to use my naira card and pay for dollar transaction, I said that is when.
We didn't have that for the longest time.
We didn't have it.
Right.
It's happening now. Now the banks are even, you can see that different banks have different rates. I remember then I said, why was the CBN shying of getting banks involved in the FX market? But today banks are involved. There's a lot awash with liquidity. You see the exchange rate between if you have to use your naira card, and if you even have to go to the bureau de change, you realize that you just use your naira card, it's cheaper. So there's so much liquidity in the system in terms of dollar liquidity.
Right.
And don't forget that the current recapitalization of the banking sector also drive a lot of FX into the market. So kudos to them.
Okay, so another thing, I remember that period. I remember I was, when we were doing the coverage, of the elections, I was tracking the stock market. That time, we're around about 55,000 for the all-share index, 55,000 points. And I was seeing steady rise. That period, the bulls, came in full force. And now we've crossed a new high. We're at new highs at this point, over 200,000 points. So it's been quite the run so far since May 2023. I don't know if you expected this amount of bullishness on the stock market.
Never. Nobody embraces it. Nobody, because no administration have come in from the era of President Olusegun Obasanjo to Shehu Musa Yar'Adua to Goodluck Ebele Jonathan and to Muhammadu Buhari. In short, Muhammadu Buhari, 8 years, was the worst year of the stock exchange. If you calculate that 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari, the only stock exchange only gained, if you look at it, they only performed better 2 years out of 8 years. But when you look at what the president has done, I keep saying it, if there's any area, is there any policy that hit the ground running, it was the policy that drive the stock market. The stock market is the only economic barometer that you said has benefited more on the economic reform of President Tinubu. That's why people say the reform is more for the rich than for the poor.
So it's more for the rich because the man on the street not really getting, not making money from
they don't even have the money
this bull run.
No, they don't even have it because they have been thinking to survive. But if you look at the bullish run of the market, nobody saw it coming. And what drove that bullish run was the two things: liberalization of the FX market and removal of subsidy. Basically, that what drove the bill. Then came the reform, the banking sector recapitalization and others. It has been one of the nobody can tell me they saw it coming. We as much as we agreed that the policy was going to be good, we never saw it coming. And laddie, guess what? This is not driven by new listing. It's driven by capital appreciation of existing stocks. It was not like, oh, the exchange there was driven because you have new listing. So it's not. So by the time you have the Dangote listing before the end of the year, and by the time we are talking about when it's going next year, you might see the exchange there's triple or quadruple. So I think for the stock market, the brokers.
So that's the brightest spot.
That's the brightest spot. Everybody will be excited. But even if there were a dark side of it, that you remember the capital gain tax.
Right.
That was also the dark side of it.
All right, let's look at some of the ugly now. Public debt. Public debt. He inherited 87 trillion naira in public debt, but the current level now 159.28 trillion.
That's one thing you cannot.
We've racked up a lot of debt.
No, debt has gone up. It's gone up dramatically. I mean, it's high. I mean, it takes generations to pay off those debts. I'm telling you. I know the annoying thing about some of these debts is that this administration might not even pay up to 10% of those debts. So just like this administration is struggling to pay the debt of previous administration.
So I guess it's the same old trend.
It's the same old trend.
Debt.
But what we have seen is that governments have remained governments. They have not think out of the box. They have not been innovative. Greater economy, best economy in the world, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Chinese economy, the EU, they realize that government does not have enough to meet up infrastructural development. They key into the PPP. Why is Nigerian government shy away from the PPP? Why should government be building the coastal road? If it has that economy variable to pass through 7 states, why can't you give it build and operate? Why should government even put money in Lagos-Ibadan Expressway? It's one of the most busiest highway in Nigeria. Why didn't you give it to private sector to build and operate and earn revenue? And you just concentrate on social investment, healthcare, education. I'm not impressed when it comes to debt services. I think it's the worst. But again, when you look at when he came in, debt services to budget was about 90%. We are seeing it come down to 60%. But it's still huge because now it's coming down to 60% because they are not servicing their own debt yet. So when the new administration comes in, by the time they start servicing their own debt, then the debt servicing to budget will go high. So for me, that is one area that the APC government, now, APC government, I'm not saying about PDP government or what, I'm talking about the APC government, from the advent of Buhari till now, has taken Nigeria deep into more debt than we've ever thought we would.
Right. All right. A spot that's supposed to also be bright, GDP growth.
Yeah.
The growth trend is supposed to be bright. But if you look at it, if you zoom out, you know, our latest 3.85%. But normally, 3% was considered low. But we're celebrating.
We used to do 7% before.
Exactly.
Before,
so it's ugly.
You know, sometimes the story is like the story of the children of Israel. When the old men saw the temple, they were crying, and the young men were rejoicing. So it's sort of the same thing that we are seeing here. A lot of people are happy because why are they happy? Because at a point we're doing 1 point something, so coming to 3 point something was a huge achievement.
Which was supposed to be your previous low.
Low, now becoming highs. Yeah, I think the GDP growth. We have to also say that some of those things were beyond them in terms of global economic trend that affected the economy. But by and large, we've not seen the kind of GDP growth that we've ever seen before. And like I said, when you talk about GDP growth in Nigeria, you're talking about Nigerian output to the world. And if you look at our output, it's always in the oil and gas sector. And if you look at that sector struggling to meet up in terms of OPEC quota even, you shouldn't be surprised that. So that's why a call for celebration. But you look at when you look at our GDP growth, you realize that the positive in here, and that's why it's low, is largely driven by non-oil sector. Non-oil sector is now doing sometimes up to 80 to 90% of our general GDP. Export GDP growth to adding more to the GDP growth than the oil and gas sector. But when you look at the effects driven in by the non-oil sector, even the 7 or 10% that are coming from the oil sector is above it. So that is a major challenge. You could see that they are trying to expand the economy to make the economy, not monotonous economy that depends on one area, but you need capital input from your main source to be able to develop other sources. And that main source is struggling. It's struggling because of oil theft. Right.
Okay, so I guess that's it. And obviously there's more. You know, we're still looking for multi-dimensional poverty data because the last time we had that, 133 million Nigerians were multi-dimensionally poor. We don't have the latest one. I'm sure at some point we should get that, but it seems like it will be higher. You know.
Like the one thing we need to say, if you want to rate them based on where they're coming from, what they saw, and where they're coming to, you also comment their boldness, but also you also see that there's a lot of work to do. So if I have to rate them over 10, I'll say they'll get 6 over 10. But again, the remaining 4 that we are giving them 10 is huge because that is the 4 that affect the ordinary Nigerians. And that's what is driving the hardship in the land.
Right. Definitely, we hope the hardship ends soon. Soon enough. All right, let's pivot now. This is the last trading day of this week, of this month.
Yeah.
And so far, for May, we're up about 3.3%. But we're coming from an April that had a 20% rise for the all-share index. I guess they sold in May and went away.
I think what we saw in May, what we saw was, you remember, results were coming in. We had a lot of expectation, and that expectation was not met. So we saw in the month of May, because the expectation was not met in some banking stock in the payment of dividend. You saw a bank like Access, like UBA, so that affected the sentiment, the negativity. Then you now saw the fixed income space became a little bit attractive with the yield. So a lot of investors were now exiting, especially those stocks that they were thinking were traditionally dividend-paying stocks. So they were now exiting the market to go to the fixed income space. So we're not surprised what happened in the month of May, because that was a lot of portfolio reshuffling after that high that we saw at the beginning and towards it. So, but again, it creates an opportunity for bank-based holders also to get into the market. And remember, at that time, there's always a slowdown already, because the pension fund administrators were already there. They were not acquiring more. But again, I think, like I jokingly tell people, if you look at the All-Share Index, what it has been able to do this year already, if we end the year like this, the stock market has performed well, because it has even gone way, way above inflationary pressure. But there's still a lot of value in a lot of stocks in the market. There's a lot of fundamental of the market is still very, very strong. Even those stocks that a lot of people were exiting because they didn't pay the dividend, if you look at their fundamentals, if you look at their balance sheet, realize that it's not poor. It was a regulatory induced policy that So
technically, it's not like I didn't want to pay.
No.
All
of them
were tied.
My hands were tied because the regulators felt that we need to tighten. We need to make sure that we don't have the balls, especially when you have those capital that you have raised. So I think that's what really happened. Because if you look at their earning per shares, it was still comfortable for them to pay dividends. If you look at their holding companies, it was a bank like Access, they have that power to be able to pay, even if it is 1 naira or 2 naira. If you look at even UBA, they still have their earning per share was still strong, but the CBN was looking at other variables in terms of what is your profit after tax. What largely drove your profit after tax? Was it driven by FX devaluation, or was it really driven by your core businesses? I think that's what they were looking. They're looking at your capital adequacy ratio, looking at your loan book. The non-performing loans were huge. So those were part of the things the CBN were looking at. Remember, a lot of banks, the CBN have told them to exit forbearance. So all these, they have to make provisions for some of these things. So that was what really affected the bank. But those banks still have very, very strong fundamental going forward. It could just be a struggle now, but I can confidently say those banks will recover, especially a bank like Access and UBA. It's just a matter of time. They will definitely recover.
All right, we'll definitely be looking out for that. We've covered a lot of ground today. Thank you so much, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed. Always a delight having these conversations with you, and I guess I'll see you in the next trading month.
Yes, smiling like this.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, AFDB meetings are ending today, I believe. We'll discuss what's played out so far. Look at Africa's energy gap. That's in a moment. Do stay with us.